This is a lecture video for pages 307 through 323, Industrial Change and Urbanization, Chapter 12. We're going to see a massive explosion of urbanization, industrialization, and transportation between 1820 and 1850. The United States joins England as a world leader in industrialization. Manufacturing explodes. Finally, we are able to have a industrial revolution in the United States, and it becomes what we live for as a country, especially the North, and the landscape of America will change. Before 1815, the United States did not possess a transportation system. We have some toll roads, but remember, as we talked about, roads are dangerous, hard to keep in good shape. And so in 1809, with the creation by Robert Fulton of the steam engine, we get steamboats, and they provide the first breakthrough. Now you don't just have to go the way the river runs, you can actually go against the current. And then eventually we will have the canal boom start with the building of the Erie Canal, which connects all of the Great Lakes to the Erie Canal to the Hudson River down into New York City. So once these are seen as successful, everybody will participate. Railroads were the last and most important transportation improvement that spurred economic development in Jacksonian America. The problem is the South falls in love with the steamboat, and they don't wholeheartedly partake in the final step of the transportation revolution. States and national governments played active roles in the transportation revolution. States provided money, and the national government supplied land and other services. But again, that does happen. Canals, yes, north and south. However, the South fails to do this. The South fails to do this in the aspect of the railroad. Two Supreme Court cases that you need to remember: Gibbons versus Ogden. It said, we talked about Fletcher versus Peck before, and we talked about Woodward versus Dartmouth College versus Woodward, and those were giving the rights to the people that have a contract. Well, these are going to go against the people that have a contract, but they find a way to go against that contract. In Gibbons versus Ogden, New York State has given a steamboat company a monopoly, but they're sued because they do interstate deliveries as well, interstate commerce. And a state cannot give a monopoly to a steamboat company that has interstate usage. Only Congress can do that. So they actually win this case, and that contract is thrown out. Charles River Bridge versus Warren River Bridge. It promoted the economic competition by ruling that the broader rights of a community take precedent over a presumed right of a monopoly granted in a corporate charter. They needed a bridge built, and they said they would pay somebody to build it. A guy said he would build it, and he would charge everybody a toll every time they went over it, blah, 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 blah. Well, the people don't want to pay the toll anymore. They want to build their own bridge, and so he sues them, and he actually loses and says the broader rights of the community outweigh those that may have been given in a charter. Here's the map that shows all the roads, canals, navigable waterways, railroads in the north and in the south. And we'll see another one of these maps once we get a little bit later towards the Civil War. But as you can see, there are lots more roads in the north than in the south. There's more canals in the north than in the south. Again, all this transportation stuff, they're greater in the north than they are in the south. Here is a picture of, pretty cool picture of the canals, and you remember how we talked about it in class. In the early 1800s, the largest American cities have one major theme. They're all Atlantic ports. New York, Philadelphia, Boston, Baltimore, they all grow out of the transportation revolution. All of them are Atlantic ports. Now we have inland port cities, um, such as Cincinnati, Cleveland, Detroit, and Chicago. All of them have access to the Great Lakes. Um, and they're either on the Ohio River or on the Great Lakes. And then the Great Lakes, of course, connect to the Erie Canal to the Hudson River into New York City. The Great Lake ports and new industrial towns were the fastest growing cities. Immigrants flocked there from Ireland because of the potato famine, and Germany because of political unrest, and it swells the population of almost every city. Every city has a massive amount of immigrants that just explode the population of these cities. Again, I showed you this in class. It's kind of interesting. You have the ports and are the cities and the port cities that just explode. Okay, you have New York here. That's the largest city, but then you have a borough of New York, Brooklyn, that is one of the largest cities in the United States, and it's right outside of New York. The number of different immigrants immigrating into the United States. Francis Lowell built Lowell, Massachusetts, just outside of Boston. It was the nation's leading textile mill, second largest city in Massachusetts. First textile mill that goes straight from taking cotton all the way into fabric. And so he builds this factory here. His workers live here. His workers worship here. His workers shop at the general store around the corner, and he really takes advantage of all the workers. He's smart. He does a lot of good things, but he tries to take too much control over his workers, and his workers end up rebelling against him and burning the town down. But these massive these massive textile centers start popping up all over the United States, in the northern half of the United States. The Northeast led America's Industrial Revolution. Large-scale factories, textile mills were built in New England in the 1820s. Industrialization diminished the importance of artisans. We don't need to use the putting out system anymore. The household system of manufacturing, the cottage system, where you're making stuff at home. We are now making everything in a factory. Factory is a much more useful thing for the simple fact that the owners of all the equipment and all of the product can now watch over their workers all at once. You have a birth of a new middle class of the people that are actually running the factories. It's really remarkable what happens with urbanization, industrialization, and the changing to the American system of government. All right, I'm going to go over these. Wow. Families, they draw on all families. They draw on just women, and then they go to finally closing the technological gap in 1815 with Britain, with the development of the cotton gin and the American system of manufacturing. Now, putting out system, that's gone. We're putting that out to pasture. The Rhode Island system, they recruit entire families for employment in factories. Okay, father, mother, children, everybody. The Waltham system, they actually have unmarried young women go work in their factories. And all these things are kind of interchangeable until we get to the American system of manufacturing. We talked about Eli Whitney and the cotton gin. We talked about Eli Whitney and how remarkable he is, except for the fact that cotton gin's great, but the use of interchangeable parts is the big thing. Interchangeable parts is huge. In the early years of industrialization, the gap between the rich and poor widens and a new middle class emerges. As I said, the separation between work and home is the first defining quality of the middle class. And so if you have enough money, the women get to stay home, and through the cult of domesticity, the idea that because of being women, govern their women's world, and they are going to take care of the children. The largest economic change is with the new middle class produces this new working class of predominantly immigrants. And they have different job skills, gender, race, ethnicity, and that divides the work class. And that's the same thing that we have today. Early unions are formed to defend artisan rights. And these different working classes and things that happen are just super interesting. And unfortunately, for a lot of these workers, they don't have a chance to really get a grip on things. Talked about all this. Okay, last thing we're talking about is reform and moral order. The benevolent empire dedicated to the restoration of moral order back in America. They see a breakdown of moral authority. They want to revive and impose moral discipline. The benevolent empire is founded to restore moral order in response to increasing number of urban poor. The Great Awakening, Second Great Awakening's organization and communication techniques. The Sabbatarian movement is the boldest expression to enhance the Protestant Christian power. So Sabbatarian movement, as we talked about, is to try to make the Sabbath day holy, Sunday, where they don't work. Okay, where nobody works. The only lasting kind of thing out of this was the mail not being delivered on Saturday. Temperance had the greatest impact of any reform movement, and that's where we'll pick up when we talk about the next one. How was the reading select? The video lecture for 307 through 323.